All right, let me just go into slide share. All right, are you seeing the slides? Are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go straight into it, report writing. So briefly, I have some objectives here about what is a report, types of report, writing a report, why do written report, parts of a written report, and a summary. So what is a report? What really is a report? It is a form of writing that is organized, concisely identifying and examining issues such as events or findings that have happened in a physical space or a physical sense, such as events that have occurred within your organization. All right? Types of report, we have our formal and informal, and there is other categorization of reports, but I use this one because this applies to our setting. All right, so formal reports, it follows a specific format. It tends to be detailed, it should be detailed. It is highly structured and it is prepared in a prescribed format. Formal reports are written in the narrative style or the manuscript format. It helps management in making long-term and strategic decisions. The objective of formal report is to assist in decision-making by providing effective recommendation. And of course, it is usually far more detailed than an informal report. Formal reports are important documents, and we know why, because at some point we have to use them as reference, yeah? They have to have certain specific information. So take, for instance, last couple of years ago, we wanted to know what the membership of the church was. You know, we would need to go back to these reports, yeah? So pertinent information are usually in these reports. Most formal reports follow a set of order of contents, naming an issue or a problem, remedy or remedies already applied, and the consequences of actions taken to resolve the issues or the problems being addressed, and other pertinent details. We talk about informal report, and you will be quite familiar, should be quite familiar with informal report. Informal report are type of report that are used in business and church settings. It doesn't require a specific format or structure. Sometimes when we give report, a verbal report is considered an informal report. It includes brief and unstructured information. So somebody might be telling you, oh, we went to a baptismal service, and they tell you from their point of view, yeah? It includes brief and unstructured information, as I said, and it is shorter and has fewer sections than a formal report. Don't get it wrong, an informal report can also be a written report, all right? It is typically used for internal communication within organizations, and for persons who are on the platform who are currently in work setting, you know, you see from time to time your organization might send out memos or web posting or even some emails. They are all considered informal. So I'm going to touch a little on report writing right now. So it is the process of organizing and presenting information, as I had mentioned previously, in a clear, concise, and objective manner for a specific audience. And you notice I say objective because we have to be careful when we are writing report that we do not make it too subjective. Yeah, my opinion. That's not what you really want in a report. I'm not saying that there's not a place for it, but you want it to be factual and objective as possible. It involves gathering data, all right, analyzing it, and presenting it in a format that is easy to understand and relevant to the topic at hand. So if you're giving a report, so for instance, the clerk is giving the report, you know what are the things that the clerk is supposed to capture in her report, because you expect those things coming out of the clerk's report. A written report presents a formal record of a transaction, which is not possible sometimes in a verbal report, because sometimes what happens is that persons will say one thing in a verbal report, and then the next time you ask them, they might change, right? But you can have both a written report and someone present it in a verbal form. It conveys information without distortion because it is written. Yeah, it is written. So what is there is there. On the other hand, a message can be easily misrepresented, as I said, in a verbal report. What are the advantages of a written report? A written report is more convenient for lengthy and distant communication. A written report requires a reader to think before responding to a message. So you would have to go through it again, and then you think about, okay, am I responding appropriately based on what is here? Facts, figures, and statistical data can be better represented graphically in a written report, all right? And so like your treasurer's report and those reports, you would need to see them, because even although you hear the numbers and you hear that this was the amount that was spent for that, unless you literally take a pen and jot them down, you know, it is sometimes hard to follow these reports. But if you get it in a written format, it is much easier for you to follow. Continuing with the advantage. Writing a report is not easy, all right? As it says, that's just writing an email, because sometimes we write email and it is not necessarily a formal thing unless we attach something to the email, all right? A report can be brief, but it must be a precise document. It is written for a specific audience with specific objective. And I will reiterate that it is written for a specific audience. So we have different reports that are written for different purposes. If you have a report for school, it is going to reflect differently. If you're doing a report for, say for instance, you are a coordinator and you're making a report on the group you are coordinating, the report is going to be different from a report that you will be tabling for a church business meeting. To write a report, you need to first thoroughly understand what is the purpose of the report, all right? Because if you truly understand why the report is being written, then you will better be able to fulfill those purpose of the report or the requirements of the report. So you have to research the information from the different sources. You might have to get information from here. You have to get other person's perspective on the situation. And so to get a full view of what is happening, you might have to include various persons, you know, various ministries. You might not have been, as the clerk, you might not have been at all the events. And so you have to find a way of pulling in all the information as accurate as possible. You want to verify the validity of the information that you receive. You want to analyze the information and you want to present the findings for this information. So the business meeting of our church is a formal setting, and the report must be done in a prescribed standard. And I know you hear me saying some things over, but it's for emphasis, yeah? As these are permanent documents for the church, it can be used for verification in later years. there might be something that is very pertinent, as I said, that you need to research. I remember when I was doing some studies with JBI, I know I had to pull on some of my senior persons for some pertinent information that I would not have readily known. The information presented needs to be detailed, factual, and as I have here, less opinion based. Less opinion based. Because the truth is, a lot of times when you write a report and it is factual, people really can't challenge you much, because it is what it is, It's not you trying to fix it a particular way. It is what it is. And so if we did not do well in terms of baptism for this period, it is not arguable. The numbers are there to prove, how well we did. Or if we did not do a lot of outreach, the numbers are going to be there, So the steps to writing a church ministry report is listed here, and I'll go through them. Is there any question as so far, or are we clear as I have been going through? Are we clear so far? Brethren, are you hearing me? I have to make sure you're hearing me.
Yes.
Right, and we're clear so far. Okay, great. All right. So steps to writing a church ministry report. And I put writing a church ministry report because you can appreciate there is no way I can sit here tonight and go through every single report that is required for your business meeting. But I will try and see how best, by going through these steps, how they can apply to the different ministries that persons have to present a report at the business meeting session. All right. So there are some general things that you have to, that applies to all, but there are some specific things that apply to some reports. All right. And as I go along, once I remember, I'll just mention them. All right. So it says, state briefly the purpose, right? State briefly the purpose. So you have to say what the purpose of the report is, present the objectives, report the progress, maintain a pattern, categorize and, well, that's doubling up. It really should just be categorize, include future commitment, and this must be outlined, and recommendation. And I'll go through them one. So when we talk about state briefly the purpose, you want to give the background of the ministry, the need for development, the purpose of the report. All right. So you give a little, beginning of the report. And I know for our setting, sometimes we normally put in a scripture that help to guide or uplift whatever we're writing. And that is fine. That is okay. And so I have a little example here where I said the Women's Ministry of Church X was formed with the purpose of catering to women in the community, utilizing skills and fellowship as a tool of drawing them closer to Christ. So it kind of gives you a little, update on where you're going as it relates to the report. Present your objectives, So you're using thought, skills, and fellowship as a tool of drawing unsaved women is an example, or to have a positive impact on at least 5 women in the community for the year or for the period in review. All right, so you should have some objective going forward. You need to report the progress in terms of the intended direction. If there were challenges that need to be mentioned, and these are challenges in attaining the goal. So it is in, the focus is in whatever ministry you are reporting on. And I understand that sometimes based on the report that you're writing, for example, I can give you an example. I find sometimes, like when I am doing the leader's report, you will find some similarity between the leader's report and the pastor's report and the clerk's report. And that's okay. You know, that is okay because those three reports would have to have things that are similar, not in totality, but there will be some similarity because when the leader is looking at the progression of certain ministries and so, you know, you're going to have the same thing coming out, but make more in a statistical format in the clerk's report. All right. So in terms of the intended direction, if there were challenges in attaining the goal, the percentage progression, and that is so very important because when you have a report and say, for instance, you have not fully met your target, by just saying you have not fully met your target is not saying much to someone as if as when you say, well, then we have accomplished 50% of our target. It puts in person mind some amount of weighting on what has been accomplished thus far. You follow? Yes, so that is important. And don't be afraid to use graphs, yeah, graphs in your report because remember we have different type of learners. And so the person who is a visual person would appreciate that more than somebody just presenting or hearing something. Maintain a pattern. You have standard reporting format. And more specific, templates, pre-design. So I am thinking for each church represented here, I'm not saying you need to follow that church template or you need to follow. I know the conference has a template sometimes that it asks for certain reports on, and that's fine, and that's for the conference purpose. But for the churches, you need to have a pre-design or a template that you use. So if Sister Carol is the clerk this year, then next year, the new clerk have the same template. So you get a uniformity of the presentation of the facts and the information that is pertinent. And it's not just a Sister Carol report on what she felt like, and then the other clerk report on. So you standardize it. Yeah. You want to standardize it so that you can see, all right, 5 years ago, this was the membership. 5 years ago, this is where we were at. 5 years ago, this is how we approach this. And then you can look now at today's day and say, all right, this is the approach that we have taken, or this is the improvement for over the last 5 years. So it gives you some statistics and it gives you some pertinent data to work with, right? And as I said here, this will help to create an aligned and coordinated idea about a wholesome development of the ministry. All right. Categorize. This will help the readers or members to note the progress and events held to achieve the objectives. What strategies were applied? Yeah. And you have future commitments should be outlined. I put a little thing there to remind myself that it's kind of self-explanatory. So the goals for the next period are the continuation of some project that were not completed before the current reporting period. All right. So you have to have that. So as I said, to ensure that you have uniformity moving forward. So I'm going to look now at parts of a report. All right. And I don't know whichever the different minister, the different officers that are here, but I hope you can look at what I'm going to present just now and can apply it to whatever ministry you're operating in terms of your report writing. So of course, for your report, you have to have an introduction, and I'll pause a little. Your heading needs to be there. So you need to say, let me use my church. So this report is a report to the annual business meeting being held March 24th, 2024. Yeah. So it gives you a venue, it gives you a time, and that is also important for reference. Then you have your introduction. This section indicates the purpose of your report. So this is the clerk's report, and you say something about it. How the data was collected. If you have to collect data, the introduction section may also provide information on who has written the report and the date in which it is submitted. All right. And also I'll put the period too, because although you might be presenting the report for the annual business meeting, yeah, your reporting period doesn't always align exact to the last day before the business meeting. So the reporting period needs to be outlined, and especially like for your treasurer, which you have to cut off before, even a month or two before your business meeting, in order for the books to be audited. All right. So the introduction section may also provide information on who has written it. And also at the introduction, you need to add your mission and vision statement, especially if it is an annual report. And I put that because if you're doing your, I don't know, for all the churches, we have 1/3 quarterly report. If you are doing your quarterly or your 1/3 report, you don't always have to put your vision statement or your mission statement. And I'm not necessarily speaking about the mission and vision statement of the church. The ministry in which you are writing the report can have its mission and its vision, which aligns to the greater mission and vision. All right. So it can align to the bigger mission and vision of the church. So you can tweak it a little more, that it can be mainly with the focus towards women. If it's a men's ministry, likewise. All right. And you must have your goals, because if you don't set up these things, then you know, your report won't have a structural way in flowing. Points to be communicated are, we're talking about the body of the report now. Points to be communicated should be in the body, the achievements, the growth. Again, I use the example, the number of baptisms for the period, the outreach. For the clerk, you might want to have members lost by migration, debt transfer, etc. For your treasurer, you would want to make sure that you include all forms of income, whether tithe, offering, donation, whatever, and your expenditure, whatever was spent, giveaway, donated, must also be included. All right. Avoid too much negativity, as there are always things to celebrate as a church. And I put that in because sometimes, take for instance, we write the treasurer's report and we don't see, as we say, we don't see a lot of income coming in. We can encourage, and that can come now in the recommendation, that we encourage our brethren to give a little more, you know, but we have to know how to make those statements without being too negative or offensive to our brethren. The findings is the next step. It is an imperative section of a report, which is written after you have your investigation and your analysis. And yes, it might not be a research, but it does have, you have to do your investigation, your little research on, you know, what it is or what have impacted this. So this section presents factual information without interpretation or suggestion. And why I put without any interpretation or suggestion is not that you are not going to interpret what is there factually, but I'm talking about self-interpretation or suggestion. I think this is why this never occur. But what is it that you have that can tangibly back up that statement? And so we have to be careful of how we put in those statements. You will find that you will commonly see your findings in your treasurer or your auditor's report, because your auditor have to audit the books of the treasurer. And so they have to state what it is that they have seen, and if they have seen any discrepancies, or if there is anything, if everything is okay, then they can say, well, then they are confident that with the treasurer's report, and it can be accepted. And your conclusion, it's good to put a little conclusion on your report, summary of the finding, a brief recap of the main points in the report, because sometimes, depends on the length of your report, persons might not be able to go through all the report, but by scanning on what you have at the end, they can have an idea or a feeling of what it entails. A brief recap of the main points, including achievements and acknowledgement. And don't leave out your recommendations. So the final section, which are usually based on, what it is that you have come upon as a result of being in this ministry, and by writing this report, you have a way of writing the recommendation. I know some, I recommend that this be done, that, but you have some different ways of writing recommendation. And if you're writing a strong recommendation, the verb that is used would be different from a suggestive type of recommendation. And it does make a difference, because sometimes, persons listening or reading the report will understand that this is a very important recommendation that you are making that will enhance or will improve on the ministry that you are presenting on. All right. And you must also ensure that the person who writes the report, their name is there. And if the person who writes the report and the person who is submitting the report is two different persons, it needs to be noted and the signature affixed, because if it is not signed off, it might be considered not authentic. Because anybody can write a report, all right? So in summary, your report should include your heading, your introduction, the body, all right, the findings, your conclusion, and your recommendation. And that's it. Thank you. Over to you, Pastor. Any questions?
Any questions or anyone?
All right. I guess there's no question. All right.
No one have any questions? Right, I guess there's no question, then hand over. Sister Sophia?
I was saying no questions. It was straightforward. And I understood.
All right, great. Sister June Parks? Sister June? Sister Parks?
Pastor? If
I was trying to get to Sister June.
All right. All right. In the interim, if there's no question, I can ask a question. I'll throw out a question. Why is it important that, give me 2 reasons why